Velvet receipt. The receipt was a thin slice of velvet lying to my face. It lived in the pocket of my jacket where I keep the things I'm supposed to remember: parking stubs, dry clean tags, lists written on the backs of lists. A bartender had folded it into a neat triangle and tucked it under the credit card. When I unfolded it at home, the paper smelled faintly of orange peel and somebody else's shampoo. Hush Rooftop, it said in tidy caps. 2 cocktails named like secrets. A small plate that cost as much as rent in another city. Time stamp, 11:48 p.m. I hadn't been to Hush. Not at 11:48, not ever. But my wife had worn my jacket the night before, after her late pitch at the agency. She likes my jackets. She says they make her feel like she's borrowed the weather. When I held up the receipt at breakfast, the black ink winked at me as if we shared a private joke that would get better if I stopped pretending not to understand. "Did you go out after the meeting?" I asked, trying to sand the edges off my voice. Eva was spooning honey into her yogurt like she was drawing a map. "A bit," she said. "The client was giddy. Everyone needed to rinse their brains." "Why?" I rotated the receipt. "You didn't tell me you went a Hush." She glanced at it, then at me, head tilted, ponytail slipping over her shoulder like a comma. "We didn't plan, it was late. I forgot." "That's not like you." A shrug, casual enough to have been rehearsed. "I'm full of surprises lately." I put the rectangle on the counter between us. She didn't reach for it. It lay there like a third party at breakfast who knew our middle names. "Listen, I am not the jealous type. I am the careful type. I alphabetize spices. I fold fitted sheets. I save the other half of the sandwich because someone might want it later. But careful is a cousin of suspicion, and that morning suspicion pulled out a chair." I kissed her cheek and left for work, and the kiss felt like resting my mouth against a window to see what was on the other side. At the agency where I write words for people who think they can buy charm by the pound, the day buzzed like it meant well. Briefs, edits, a meeting in which 5 adults debated whether Crush or Obsession would sell more shampoo. In the quiet between things, I checked Eva's Instagram. She had posted a shot in the bathroom mirror at 10:27, her in a black blouse with sleeves that made daring look like an accident. No tags, no geotag, just the caption, "Late pitch working its magic." A heart emoji. It glowed back at me like a small exit sign. At 3:12, my phone lit up with a DM from a stranger. The profile picture was a doorway painted ocean blue. "We need to talk," it said. "I think my boyfriend and your wife were at Hush together last night." It is amazing how quickly one sentence can invite every bad possibility inside. "Who is your boyfriend?" I typed. "And who are you?" "I'm Nora," came back almost instantly. "He's Oliver." "You don't know me. I wish you didn't have to." The name landed like a coin dropped down a stairwell. Oliver works on Eva's team. He laughs big, hugs big, moves through rooms like he's the mayor. I never disliked him. I just disliked what everyone liked about him. "I'm not trying to explode your life," Nora added. They left through the service elevator at midnight. I was there. I was supposed to meet him. "If I'm wrong, tell me I'm crazy and block me. If I'm right, meet me tonight. 7 Hush, back corner by the heaters." My fingers hovered over the glass like birds afraid to land. The smart thing would have been to call Eva and say, "Tell me a story I can live with." The careful thing would have been to wait, collect evidence, build a safe bridge across a dangerous river. What I did was neither. At 6:45, I put on a shirt that made me look like I was trying, and I went. Hush is on top of a hotel that's famous for pretending not to be famous. You ride a mirror-walled elevator, pass a velvet rope guarded by a woman whose cheekbones could cut glass, and step into a deck blending palm fronds with skyline. The city glimmered like it was flirting with us. Nora stood by the heaters, exactly where she'd said, wrapped in a camel coat that looked like it could keep its own secrets. Her hair was pinned up in a twist that only looks effortless when it took 20 minutes. She held a glass of something citrus and clear, and her gaze carried exactly enough steel to keep it from shaking. "Eli?" she asked. "Yes," I said it like a confession. "I'm sorry," she said, which sounded less like a courtesy and more like an oath. "Me too," I said. We didn't sit. We stood shoulder to shoulder and looked down at the city like two people who wanted to ask it a favor. "Last night," she began, businesslike, as if discussing the weather in a storm. "He told me to meet him at the hotel bar, said the team was celebrating a win. I got there at 11 and I saw him with your wife. Not in a corner, not guilty, just tuned to each other in a way that makes everyone else background music." "Some people read as foreground," I said, and hated that I understood what I meant. "No," she said softly. "This was a code. Shoulder leans, fingertips. That little space between two people who know exactly how far they have to stand to be safe and exactly how far they want to be to feel something." My chest tightened. The heaters clicked and breathed. A couple posed for a photo on the edge of the deck and kissed like they were assembling proof of life. "I didn't confront them," Nora continued. "I watched. They didn't kiss. If they had, we wouldn't be here. I left when they left, and yes, I followed. They got in the service elevator together. Maybe they just needed to keep from being seen by clients. Maybe they're so thoughtful they use staff corridors to protect other people's evenings." The hope in her mouth twisted at the end and died. "I know this is insane," she said, "but if we sit here, we might see them. Hush is a habit for Oliver when he's trying to act like he didn't plan to act this way." "And what will we do?" I asked. "Not throw a drink," she said. "Speak to them privately. Decide if we want to be the kind of people who survive this." The sky dimmed like a dimmer matters, and the room got busier without getting louder. I watched the door because I didn't want to watch the door. Nora's hand, gloved and precise, rested on the railing. I noticed the way her breath fogged the air and thought, in a detached way, how our bodies try to keep us visible when our lives would prefer we were. At 7:23, the elevator hummed and delivered Oliver in a jacket with a ridiculous collar. Behind him came Eva. My mouth went dry the way dry happens in dreams, where you can't say what you need to, and somebody's already walking away. Eva looked like she dressed inside a yes. A black dress that skimmed, heels that made the city notice its posture, the bracelet I'd given her in Lisbon when we were new and thought glances were private property. They didn't touch. They didn't have to. When he whispered something into her hair and she threw her head back and laughed, I recognized the shape of it. Nora's shoulder touched mine. "We're doing this," she said, and we moved. It is a peculiar skill to approach people you love like you are a stranger asking for directions. We nodded at coworkers we knew, squeezed past a cluster of donors smelling like leather and lime, and arrived at the edge of them as if we'd been invited. "Hey," I said, my voice behaving better than I was. "What are the odds?" Eva's eyes widened. She's quick. She's always been quick. Her surprise read as surprise, not guilt, and for a second I believed there was an explanation that could fold itself neatly and fit into my pocket, receipt and all. "Eli," she said, delight pitched slightly too high. "You're here." "Old friend of mine texted," I lied. "Thought I'd see the view." Nora's smile was the kind you wear to funerals. "Hi, Oliver." Oliver recovered faster. He does public recovery like a sport. Nora, Eli, what a town, huh? He spread his arms as if he'd made the skyline himself. Can we talk somewhere that doesn't have an audience? Nora asked, sweetness cracked to show bone. We found an alcove near the heaters, out of earshot of people who liked overhearing almost as much as they liked dessert. The four of us stood in a 2x2 grid that used to be called a double date and now had different names. You're freaking me out, Eva said, her laugh smaller now, less sure of its lighting. What is this? Honesty Hour, I said, with excellent lighting and terrible timing. Oliver looked wounded, as if the suggestion he might be anything but delightful was an inconvenience to his brand. We were celebrating the mock-ups. The client wants a whole campaign, can you believe it? We came to Hush because the team knows the bartender. That's the mystery solved. Who wants fries? Do you always use the service elevator when you leave? Nora asked, not sweet at all now. His mouth flexed. Back of house is faster. For what? She said. For not being seen. Eva's eyes flicked to mine. Don't do this here, she said. Where else do people tell the truth? I asked, softer than I felt. In rooms where no one's watching, because it hasn't been happening there either. She exhaled through her nose, a tiny white flag. Nothing happened. I believe you, I said, and the sentence cost me. But, she added, something was happening, in the wrong part of my head. She looked at Oliver with a professionalism that could cut. I let myself like the way we worked. I liked being seen in the exact shade I wished my husband saw me. I liked the idea of being an idea again. Nora flinched like a string had been plucked inside her ribcage. Oliver opened his mouth to spin. Eva didn't let him. We were not sleeping together, she said, and while she didn't look at me, she stood next to me, and that was something. We are reckless with proximity. For that, I am sorry. That's the ugliest part of the truth I can carry right now. There are silences that hurt because they're empty and silences that hurt because they're full. This was the second kind. The heaters hummed. Someone cheered. A cork announced itself like a cannon. I can't make a scene, Nora said. I am not the scene-making kind. But if we keep standing in the almost of this, I will forget how to live in my apartment. Then we don't stand in almost, I said. We stand in separate places and see who walks toward whom. Eva nodded, eyes bright like winter. I'll go home with you, she said. We'll talk. We won't pretend we're better because we walked through a fancy door. I'm not going to be your villain in this narrative, Oliver muttered. He reached for Nora's hand and she took a step back that looked small but registered as a mile. You never were, she said. You were the plot device. We left without ceremony. The elevator down was bright and unromantic. In the mirror walls, we were four properly dressed adults and two pairs of hands that didn't know what to do. Outside, dusk had settled into the kind of blue that makes people write poetry they'll regret in the morning. Eva hailed a cab and leaned toward me like the car door was common ground. Come, she asked. I'll walk, I said. Let me meet the silence first. She nodded, got in, didn't close the door immediately. I'm sorry, she said, and the door clicked. Nora and I stood on the curb while the city rearranged itself. Her coat collar was up. Her mouth, unpainted, looked like someone's secret kindness. She looked at me with the same wary recognition I felt. It is strange to be someone's co-conspirator in saving your own life. Do you need anything? I asked, because men are taught to ask the question when they can't fix the problem. I need to not go home to a story where I'm a fool, she said, a little laugh leaking out despite her. Do you ever want to sit somewhere that doesn't know you and make a choice without hearing the soundtrack from the old choices? There's a diner 2 blocks down, I said. The kind with steel on the outside and pies pretending to be family. The diner welcomed us the way diners welcome everyone. Coats on pegs, mugs set down like good news, a waitress who called both of us love as if we had earned it. We slid into a booth and stared at laminated menus without reading them. Nora wrapped her hands around her cup and watched the steam. "I'm not going to pretend I didn't notice you before all this," she said. "At the agency launch last spring, you were the only person refilling water pitchers without looking around to see who was noticing." "I noticed you then too," I said, "and it wasn't a line. You were untangling the vendor's cords like you'd been born backstage." We smiled, not with triumph, not with victory, but with the small dignity of two people who could have made different mistakes than the ones we made. "This is the part in movies where they sleep together to punish the people who hurt them," she said. "And then the movie decides that was healing." "I don't want punishment," I said. "I want something without borrowing it from somebody else's life." She nodded. The waitress slid a slice of cherry pie between us without asking. The cherries shone like small sirens. We talked until the pieces of us that had been loud fell quiet. About who we were before we had to be brave. About how long it takes to realize that marriage is not a contract. It's a language you translate every day. About the precise ache of wanting to touch someone you could honor and the odd tenderness of deciding not to. At the door, the bell offered us an exit line. Nora reached for my hand and didn't take it, and in that not taking I felt a carefulness that was, somehow, erotic. The kind of heat that blushes instead of burns. "Someday," she said, half-smile, "we will tell a less dramatic story about tonight." "Someday," I agreed, "we'll say we chose the longer road." On the sidewalk, we parted like people who knew how to look back without turning to salt. I walked home through a city that has seen it all and still makes room for beginnings. Eva was on the couch with her shoes off, hair down, the bracelet loose around her wrist like a halo that had paused to rest. She stood when I came in, the way you stand when you decide you're not going to run. "I don't have a speech," she said. "Good," I said. "I don't have a verdict." We sat close without touching and let the room do some of the holding. She told me the truth in small stones, how she'd let herself get admired in a way that skipped past me, how she'd enjoyed being a spark more than she'd cared to admit, how nothing had yet crossed the line our vows had drawn, and how that line had still felt smudged. I told her about the rooftop, about Nora's steady hands, about the diner and the pie and the kiss we didn't take. We did not fix a marriage in an evening. We put it on the table like a watch you've discovered is slow. We promised to wind it, to check it, to listen for the good ticks. We made rules you can write in pencil. Therapy on Wednesdays, radios off at dinner, compliments that name specifics. We held each other in the kitchen the way you hold someone when you are both sturdy and a little breakable. In the morning, I discovered I had kept the velvet receipt. I nearly threw it away and didn't. I slid it into a drawer where we keep warranties and birth certificates and all the paper you save to prove your life is real. Not as a trophy, as a map pin, as the tiny square of night where two people decided not to wreck themselves for the sport of it. Sometimes when Eva laughs, I hear that rooftop echo and flinch. Sometimes when she kisses me, I feel a different kiss we didn't have and am grateful we didn't. Desire behaves like weather. You learn what to wear. Weeks later, I passed Hush and looked up. The heaters were still throwing their soft gold across faces I didn't know. I texted Nora a picture of the sky because some silences deserve postcards. "Looks better from the street," I wrote. "It does," she wrote back. "How are your long roads?" "Paved," I typed. And worth it. At home, Eva leaned against the counter with a spoonful of honey and a look that didn't need translation. I kissed her, long enough to change the temperature of the room, careful enough to not mistake heat for proof. When we let go, we were both a little breathless, like we'd arrived somewhere without breaking any laws. The receipt slept in the drawer, and we stood in the kitchen holding each other the way two people hold a map between them and agree, for now, on north.